right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, so much has changed. Wait, no, I forgot. Nothing has changed at one position. First off, how you doing, my friend?
Good. It's like you said before we started, you were queuing up Caddyshack. Well, we're waiting. That's where we are right now. We're still waiting on a quarterback. We have a team, the GM and a head coach and a ownership that have put together a defense, rebuilt defense, added some depth on the offensive line, brought back a wide receiver. Look like we've got everything starting to come together going into the draft, except we don't have a quarterback. And I don't know what they're going to do.
I know that we talked about the one piece of this is that there are other teams. The Browns are they're a little different because they do have Kenny Pickett. They are looking at possibly Carson Wentz now, and we could talk about that in a minute. The Steelers are definitely in the same boat with maybe just a tad more. We have Tommy DeVito, who's now this would be year 3 for him in the league. When the season ended, we were not counting on Tommy DeVito being on this team. So the fact that he's the only quarterback. And then you got the Steelers have Mason Rudolph, a guy who's been in the league a number of years, was with the Steelers, went to the Titans, came back to the Steelers this year now. So they technically have somebody.
But they brought in a shiny new toy. They spent a lot of money on bringing in the wide receiver, but they don't have anybody to throw the ball to him either. So the Steelers are kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, they went and got this like unbelievable chassis and forgot that they needed an engine. Yeah. So and here we are. We don't even have the chassis. We're just like, we have neighbors. We leased a car for now with nobody to drive it. So it's. I want to say it's odd. I want to say it's upsetting, but it seems to be odd and upsetting only to people like myself and you and other Giants fans, because you don't get the sense, even from the beat writers, that there's even a hint of like the Giants and the ownership and management kind of, getting nervous and shaky. Obviously they could keep it close to the vest, but would you agree that it's weird that we're not really getting any sense from them at all of any impotence to get something done?
I don't think those reporters exist anymore that used to get those kinds of stories. So I think they may be very well, they may be anxious about this, but I don't get the sense that the reporters have connections with the team thinking anymore like they used to do back in the day. So when they want to reveal something, they'll drop it to like Paul Schwartz, but they're not going to tell Paul, oh my God, we're panicking over here.
Right.
So, what I think is very odd about this whole situation is again, it's not just us, it's the Steelers. They don't. What was the plan? And it's the same thing we talked about with the Browns when Myles Garrett was. They told me what the plan is, and it's good. He was all excited, and Darius Slayton was out there and go, "Oh yeah, the Giants have told me what the plan is." And what's the plan? Because I don't know what the plan is at this point. You got the draft, which again, it's not a given that we'll even have a shot at the first 2 quarterbacks. And we know what the free agent market looks like. And there's only 1 or maybe 2 guys that could possibly trade for. You brought up Arizona as a possible trade, but that's just us speculating.
Right. That's just
everybody thinks Cousins might be available, but none of those options are given, and they're not really the type of thing where you're like, oh yeah, we've got this. So I don't know what the plan is right now.
I think people are kind of confusing plans and goals with wishes and hopes. I think the Giants have a wish and a hope. I think the Steelers have a wish and a hope. But the plan, if your plan relies on the guy who seems to be just kind of doing things with whenever he feels like it, if he feels like it, and he's holding you borderline hostage during this time. The draft is coming up, and there's word keeps leaking out that Rodgers, that's the main guy that both teams are waiting for, that Rodgers might not decide until after the draft, which I can't imagine either one of these teams legitimately could feel comfortable enough going to the draft. In fact, of the 2, the Giants are in the better position than the Steelers because at least at 3, the Giants are fairly guaranteed of getting one of the top 2, but definitely one of the top 3. Pittsburgh is drafting much lower in the first round. You can't count on the draft. So you're literally going to say, I'm comfortable with keeping Mason Rudolph and then whatever else we
you
might
maybe got
get.
to look at people like hoping Dart falls. And that's why one of the reasons I don't think people should expect Dart to get too deep. You know, people who are talking about trading up for Dart, I'm not sure Dart gets past teams. I don't see how they get past the Steelers, but there are teams before the Steelers he might not get past. Again, it might be like last. So it's the Giants. You can't hope for that to happen. So they may be like us, and they're. I think they're meeting with Milroe. Didn't I see the Steelers?
They did already. They did already. Yes.
So they're going to. So teams like Steelers and the Giants may be looking at Milroe now in the top of the second, or the Steelers, it would be farther down the second round. But Steelers don't generally tend to move around in the draft, but they may have to. So I don't think you can assume Dart's going to be there. So they've got to look at the next tier down and the McCords and the Ewers and that route and Milroe and so forth and at that point. So, but you're right in that sense. The Steelers are worse off in that they won't have a shot. They may not have a shot at Dart. We would at least have a shot at Dart if we really quote unquote overreach and draft him at 3 or slight trade down, whatever you want to do. But you're right. The Steelers are actually a little more vulnerable here right now than we are.
Before we get back to some of the draft guys real quick, I had mentioned on the previous show that we did that the Steelers had offered a contract to Justin Fields. That at least that's what I had heard.
Yeah.
And now it was confirmed the other day that they actually did. They offered a contract very similar to what the Jets gave him, and Fields didn't respond. And a part of it, the feeling is that Fields felt kind of slighted by the Steelers because they had benched him and put Wilson in to then turn around and want to offer him a contract. And so he took a deal very similar to what Pittsburgh was offering to go to the Jets. So now you've got, with that in mind, right, you've got Russell Wilson sitting there. The Steelers and the Giants both supposedly have Wilson as a backup option to Aaron Rodgers. If Rodgers doesn't come through, then you've got Wilson. If you're Russell Wilson, I mean, what are you thinking right now? First off, you were with the Steelers and you just found out that they offered a deal to the guy that you replaced during the season. He backed you up. So how much confidence can you possibly have in those guys that you want to go there?
No.
And then you turn around to the Giants, and the Giants only have Tommy DeVito, and they're still willing to sit there and wait and not give you a deal because the word is that he made it known that he's ready to sign, and the Giants didn't sign him.
Yeah, I think we're operating under the assumption that it's the Giants that have not offered them Flacco, Wilson, the contracts. I think that's where we're and Jameis Winston. I think we're making that assumption, but that's my guess is right now is they came in, they met, the Giants are doing their due diligence. These are backup plans. This is me speculating, but I think it's pretty obvious that these are the backups plans. These are plan C if plan B, which is Rodgers, falls through. Plan A being Matthew Stafford, who, as you brought up and other people have brought up, I kept calling Matthews in the last.
That's okay. That's all right.
There's too many quarterback names.
We did
too old, and
we did a lot of broadcasts. Yeah. We broadcast for over 9 total hours over the last 3 videos.
Yeah, so, get off my back. so, anyways, but yeah, so it's just an interesting, weird situation that's going on, and I'm getting a little bit like Cam Hayward. Did you see Cam Hayward this week for Pittsburgh? Did you see?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of what he was saying in regards to.
And again, I want to address the other people who are saying, what do we have to lose by waiting? And Cam Hayward, for those who didn't see it, and another podcasts are everywhere now, said, "Hey, you either want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers or you don't, and if you don't, fine, but." The opportunities here, make a decision. I'm getting tired talking about it. And Cam Hayward's one of the leaders of that team. So that would potentially be a kind of uncomfortable situation too, because he's publicly come out and said, shit or get off the pot, basically.
Right. Yeah, basically.
Make a decision here. And I kind of feel like that too. And again, I understand the people that are out there saying, hey, give him his time. There's nothing right now that's pressing that would cause him to wait and think about this. But my attitude is kind of like again, I am a fan. It's like, and it's a little bit like Cam. Do you want to be here or don't you? And if you don't really want to be here, then I get it that the Giants are still trying to get the best quarterback they can get. And I know you've brought up the 28 touchdown passes, and you can go back in recent years and you can see he's still productive. But we're not talking about a 30-year-old Aaron Rodgers either. We're talking about 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about a New York Giants team that has been not good the last 2 years. The hope is that he can be good enough to make us at least a borderline playoff team. But look, this is starting to look like a humiliation ritual a little bit with me with this pursuit of him. It's almost like he's holding us hostage. He's holding Pittsburgh hostage at some point. And you talked about it in the last episode. You would create a deadline at some point where you say, we've given you enough time. We don't have to be a dick about it, but look, we got to make a decision here. And other people are saying it doesn't affect the Giants or Steelers right now. Well, in a way it does, because these quarterbacks still are out there they came in, and they could start signing places. And then the guy that we liked of the best of the remaining might sign with one of these other teams, and then we didn't get our plan C guy. So, and then how much of a difference is there between Aaron Rodgers, and I know you think there's a big difference, but how much is a difference is there between Aaron Rodgers and then a Russell Wilson or a Flacco or a Jameis Winston? On paper, it looks like there's a sizable difference. But again, you got to factor in the age. You got to factor, is he going to fall off the cliff at some point? That type of thing too.
Well, for me, the bigger issue goes back to the thing where I said it was in the Giants' advantage. The Giants' advantage is being at 3. Steelers are down. What are they? 21, I think, is what we said they draft at.
Yeah.
So the advantage to the draft is more in the Giants' favor. However, that also works the opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sitting there, if you have Rodgers now, if you have Sanders, say the second quarterback, right? Let's say Ward goes. If you have Sanders kind of right here and Dart is right next to him, and you have Aaron Rodgers, I have the ability to drop a couple spots, pick up some other players or other picks or whatever, take Dart, if that's who I want. If I don't want to take Sanders, I risk letting Sanders go, or maybe I still get Sanders, but I can move. Or I think Dart's going to go lower, or I think a Milroe is a guy that I can get maybe in the second round. And that might be a little high for some, but we don't know what the Giants are thinking. So let's just play this game for a moment.
Right.
And then I take a potential all-pro, could be a yellow jacket guy down the road in a Abdul Carter or a Hunter.
Right.
And then I can take that other quarterback, that developmental guy, to go behind Rodgers, because I'm not fully committing to either one of those guys long term. But if you go to the draft and you don't have Rodgers and we didn't get Flacco, Winston, or Wilson, you are now pretty much stuck with whoever your quarterback 2 is. You got to take them, because if you don't, you risk not getting any of them, and you're stuck with Tommy DeVito.
And everybody in the league knows the Giants are in that position too.
Right.
So they know there's no secret there. So I thought you were going to actually go in another direction too. In this, the downside to Rodgers coming here is if the Giants do draft a quarterback high, Rodgers has got to think at some point he doesn't want them to pull the plug on him and start the rookie midway through the season. So, and that may be getting into the contract stuff that we talked about before.
I would think so.
And that kind of thing. So there's an upside and downside for both situations. And again, Aaron's probably gone through this, but again, how many days does this take? And I'm sorry, the let's give him some time thing doesn't resonate with me. I'm not a fan of Mike Florio, but Mike Florio was just on with Chris Sims, and Mike Florio was channeling me a little bit. He was pretty upset about this. He's like, come on, give me a break. You've had enough time to think about this. And Chris Sims was taking the opposite side. He doesn't owe anyone anything. My thing is this, is if he's hemming and hawing for a few $1 million here or there, he's been the highest paid quarterback. I think he's been the highest paid player in NFL history. And again, I don't begrudge guys getting their due, but if he's nitpicking over $1 million here or $1 million there, we're talking about a guy who's got probably tens of millions of dollars in the bank. So where do you want to be here, or do you want to be playing
Right.
Pittsburgh? That's what to me would come down, not the money.
And
So
we've said multiple times on other subjects that there can be two completely opposite things that are both true at the same time. Is it true that Aaron Rodgers can do whatever the hell he wants and decide whenever he wants?
Yeah.
Sure, he absolutely can. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, for the two teams that are attempting to bring him on board, that is the right or logical thing to do. The logical thing would say, if you know that you're not ready to make a decision, you go, don't plan anything around me. I don't even know if I want to play. So I'm not going to decide anything until June. You
Right.
guys, and then people can do what they want. Because if Aaron's big deal, right? The word was he wanted Minnesota. Now what we've heard is Minnesota doesn't want him. And
Right.
I kind of figured that's really the way it would go. You've got O'Connell as your coach. He's won with Kirk Cousins. He won when Cousins was injured and they had to play a bunch of backups. He won with Sam Darnold. I was going to say Bradford. Sam Darnold. He can win probably with J.J. McCarthy. He could probably win with Russell Wilson if they decide to bring him in later if they're not comfortable with McCarthy's recovery. I don't think you bring in a personality so big that it takes away from the guy who's used to having control over everything. And O'Connell's offense is his offense. His team is his team.
And what do you want J.J. McCarthy, who's going to be, again, that's a lot to throw at a guy. There's a high expectations. You want him knowing that Aaron Rodgers is lurking over his shoulder too. I don't think
or just pushing you to the background. If McCarthy's your guy, you can't really sit him an entire second year. There's a big difference between like a Jordan Love, right? Jordan Love sat, Aaron Rodgers sat. But what was the difference? They weren't injured and didn't play at all. They were at practice. They went through training camp. They did all that. McCarthy didn't do anything last year. He was injured. He missed the entire season. So you're now going to stunt the guy's growth who there was still room for improvement. There's big question marks on whether he really was that next guy, or was it really Penix or Nix that might have been better, depending on who you asked. So he's got to play. And if you bring a Rodgers in, then you basically have said he's not playing. Rodgers isn't going to sit. That was the thing you just brought up a minute ago, and I think it's a very salient, very specific point that a lot of people need to understand. Don't be pissed if the Giants bring in Aaron Rodgers. If that's what they do, he's playing.
Right.
He's not taking that deal.
No.
To the bench. He's not. You won't be able to bench him. You're not going to sit him in the middle of the season. That's going to be his agreement, I guarantee you, unless he's injured.
Well, that may be what's going on too. Is maybe there's haggling going on over that. I don't know. What you mentioned is it kind of can be kind of an attractive scenario for the Giants. Is this, but it could also backfire. Is say they get Rodgers. And they do take the best player available at 3, say Carter or Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And their intent is to draft Milroe in the second round. Then you've got your developmental guy behind Rodgers. And if you have him for a full year in practice and training camp in the preseason, and you go, oh my God, this guy sucks. He can't play. He's not the future. You still have your 2026 first-round draft pick at that point, and you can do it. Now, again, that's not been the Giants' MO to give up on somebody right away like that, but we're in a different era right now. So you can sort of say, oh, and the other thing, too, is you could still develop Milroe and still draft another quarterback next year.
Exactly.
I mean, best case scenario is you got 2 good quarterbacks and you trade one of them. So I was thinking about this because, again, people are going to start talking about Milroe because he ran really fast today. But that hasn't changed the fact.
Which is exactly what everybody expected. Just he would run fast.
And you can see that on tape. When you watch his highlight tape, you see him running away from everybody on defense. And you're like, and he's big. That's the other thing. He's
thick. He's really thick.
He's really big. I mean, and you're like, damn. So, and that's really attractive. But if it's 3rd and 3 and you've got a guy wide open in the flat and you can't throw a pass to the guy that's wide open in the flat, that's a problem. So again, we don't know. And there's this, I've had people on Twitter today attacking me for saying it's a cop-out to say we don't know. Some people end up being like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. Other people end up being like Anthony Richardson. You just don't know. you just don't know. You roll the dice, and it's true of every quarterback. I'm sorry, you just don't know. You take a swing. The worst thing to do is not take a swing and they're going to have to because we don't have any quarterbacks on the roster. People have been saying, Eric, update the roster, update the depth chart, take the UFAs off. I did that today, and it's weird. There's one quarterback on the Giants right now. I have of the 30 years I've run the website, I have never had one quarterback on the roster signed at this point.
Who would technically be, just for shits and giggles, who would be the emergency quarterback right now? Is it Darius Slayton?
No, it's
not Wandale. He's too small. It's not Neighbors.
It's somebody else.
It's not Hyatt.
I don't remember, but I don't know.
I thought Slayton was.
That doesn't ring a bell with me. I thought there was somebody else that was sort of the guy that could throw. Maybe it's like the punter. Who knows?
Oh, dear God. Oh, my God.
I don't know. I don't know who it is.
So a couple things I want to stick to with what you were saying. I'm going to go back to the Rodgers thing real quick, though. The other thing that Rodgers does with what you were talking about, right? It's not just that there's not a pressure to play Milroe. I mean, you literally can hide him. You have a reason that people won't be asking for him. Take Rodgers out and slip in a Russell Wilson. That degree of cover goes away a bit.
Yes.
You put in Flacco, yes. You put Flacco and Winston in, and Winston throws 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and all of a sudden everybody's wanting that backup quarterback, that rookie to get on the field. So Rodgers he's a deodorant for some of the other stuff for a little while. Again, I'm not saying he's great. One thing about Milroe that I want to bring up, you brought him up too, about not knowing. None of us know. So I'm going to state that right up. I talk sometimes very strongly in opinion. That doesn't mean that I definitely know. I don't know what's in somebody's heart. I would have thought Evan Neal would have been at least a more than serviceable right tackle based on what he did in college. I always thought he might be a better guard. I knew he was never a left tackle. I didn't like watching him at left tackle. I saw some of his games. He relied so much on his physical presence against guys that have a lesser quality that I kept going, man, if you played a better player, you're going to have some problems. But I never thought he would be as bad as he's been at tackle. So we don't know. That being said, there's been some discussion on BBI, BigBlueInteractive.com, about some comparisons to Josh Allen. That Josh Allen's biggest thing was his inaccuracy.
Right.
There is a huge difference between Josh Allen and Jalen Milroe. And that difference is Josh Allen was always a throwing quarterback. He could run, and he did run, but he was a throwing quarterback with a cannon. Wyoming threw the ball a lot. He just was all over the place, and his completion percentage was lower, but he physically was a passer. Jalen Milroe can throw the ball deep, but his mechanics are unbelievably bad. And that includes both his upper body as he goes to throw. But if you watch his feet, they're all over the place.
Right.
So that's why he's so inaccurate on things closer to him. That's a lot harder than getting a guy who has a cannon to kind of reel it in a little bit and just be a little more pinpoint accuracy. If you remember, the Giants had a problem when they brought Kerry Collins on that he was a little bit slow to get into the development of getting back and then getting the ball out. And the way he would throw would kind of throw it off a little bit. There was so much of a full backwards, upwards motion. If you remember, it was Jim Fossil that had him carry the ball up higher on his chest. So he would back up. That way he had less of a bring up. Milroe is going to have to change his upper body mechanics some, and he's got to fix his feet. And that's 2 very different fixes that you have to do. So for anybody just projecting, he can kind of improve just like Josh Allen, he can improve, but I wouldn't expect him to be Josh Allen. I think he's a better version of a Taysom Hill, but Taysom Hill was not a first-round draft pick or a low or a high second draft pick.
It's a gamble on greatness type of pick. And I like what the way Cy described it. He misses too many layups, and that's kind of a good way to put it. So you've got to. So again, it sounds like I'm picking on him, but he's a tremendous athlete. He's supposedly a really good guy, and if he was accurate, we'd be talking about him 1, 2, or 3. He would probably be talking about the first overall pick. He'd probably be ahead of Cam. If he was accurate, he'd probably be the first player picked. But the problem is that he's not accurate. So some people say, well, you can fix that. Well,
it's more than one
you
thing.
can prove it. Some
Yeah.
guys they can get better, but the league is filled with the history of the league is filled with more people that can't become accurate. And it's just in your DNA. So I'm not dismissing the possibility. There again, we can all come up with examples, but that's what the position the Giants are in right now is they may have to take a shot. The thing is if you take a shot with your second round pick, that's more tolerable than the risk with your first round pick. And I'm not saying they shouldn't draft Shedeur or Dart, which I still predicting that they probably will do. But I'll tell you what, if they did get Rodgers, this idea of maybe taking a shot in Milroe, keeping your first round draft pick for next year and getting Carter or Hunter at 3, that has some appeal to me. Again, I would put it at maybe 30-40%. You're hoping Milroe delivers the goods in a couple of years. But you'd have to get in that scenario. You'd have to get Rodgers, like you said. You'd have to get Rodgers because the leash, the fan pressure does matter to a certain degree. If their fans are in the stands, they'll be and like you said, if Winston throws 3 picks, one's in return for a pick 6, people are like put Milroe in. And the one thing you don't want to do is wreck Milroe too. You want to slowly develop it. Milroe's not cooked yet, but he needs to still be in the oven for a while and bake for another year or 2.
And you can use him for other stuff. So I mean,
you can use him in all kinds of.
And quite honestly, he could have a very long career as a guy who does a lot of stuff. Look at Justin Fields, by the way, right? The Steelers started him because Russell Wilson, I think he had a calf injury in training camp. So Fields started. Once Wilson was able to then come and take over, he took over. But they used Fields constantly to come in and do short yardage runs, design run, rollout throws every now and then. But a lot of stuff he'd come in and be more designed around him, hopefully running the ball. You could do that with a Milroe very easily. You could create a lot of packages. The Giants ran Daniel Jones a ton. You could have an Aaron Rodgers on your team, and literally part of your deal with him, if you brought in a Milroe, might be we are going to bring in Milroe from time to time to run some quarterback option runs. That'll give you a little bit of a break, especially when we get in like short yardage, stuff like that. We'll do stuff like that. You can do that, and that guy could have a long career and be very successful in a big part of your ultimate team. So the Giants, you can swing and have them be a backup. If you take a quarterback in the top 3, top 5, that guy can't be a useful backup. He's got to eventually be the guy. So I am getting a weird feeling that all the negative narrative about Shedeur Sanders for a little while has kind of gone in the other direction.
Yes.
There's a number of people now coming out.
Mel Kiper. Yeah.
I'm really starting to get. I think you've been far more in front of this for a while.
Yeah.
I think if all things are equal and the Giants end up with one of the lesser veteran options, meaning Rodgers doesn't come here, and right now you'd have to say it's less. Even though there's 2 options for Rodgers, there's 3. He could just not play, or he could just wait until a better team, a team considered Super Bowl contender, has an injury, and then maybe he comes out of the woodwork to do that. But for now, let's assume it's less than 50% chance that he's coming to the Giants.
Right.
Then you're getting one of the lesser guys.
Right.
I'm getting the weird feeling that Sanders is going to be the guy. If we take anybody other than Rodgers as a veteran, I think Sanders is the guy.
If he gets by Cleveland.
But I don't think Cleveland. I don't think they're.
Well, I'm not convinced. So the best scenario for the Giants is this: if all 3 quarterbacks are there when they're on the clock. The worst case scenario for the Giants is if only one of those quarterbacks is there when they're on the clock. And so and it could be 2, it could be 1, or it could be all 3. I think we're starting to assume Titans probably will go Ward. Well, we don't know that. And what's interesting is if they don't like Ward, they have no incentive to trade that pick like you and I talked about until the last second on draft night to the Giants, because they're going to milk that clock. They may not want Ward. They may want Carter, and they may want everyone in the world to think that they're going to draft Ward and just get the Giants to panic. That's what I would do. So they may not take Ward, and you, if you're a chain, do you call their bluff or do you panic? And then and I know you're discounting Shador at Cleveland, and that's why I'm feeling better. If they get Cousins or if they get Wentz, I'm feeling a little bit better because they got Pickett there. But again, I don't think that I saw a discussion on the Cleveland Browns, some fan pod. It was more than a fan podcast because they had some experts on it too, and they were sounding a lot like us. We got to draft a quarterback, and they brought that thing up with Myles Garrett, and he knows they need a quarterback. So again, is it Cousins he's getting happy about? Is it Shador he's getting happy about? Or is it somebody we're not even thinking about? I don't know. I don't know what Myles Garrett may, like you said, he might be embellishing. I told my wife that your definition of lie is embellish. You know? Is he embellishing? But Cleveland, I don't discount Cleveland taking a quarterback at 2. So
it just seems like if you're the guy that wanted to leave because you weren't winning, right? And you just got a $40 million deal.
Mm-hmm.
You really believing that the guy that the rookie quarterback out of Colorado, the second of the 2 quarterbacks, there's one listed is going to go 1, that's supposedly the better of the 2. We're going to get the second guy, and that's the thing. We're going.
Maybe he's all in on Shador's aura. Maybe I don't know. But what is it then?
Well, they have a massive stadium that's being built. It's a multi-billion-dollar.
How did we get stuck with such a shitty stadium? By the way, did you see the stadium? Everyone's got a better stadium than us.
Goddamn no, it's a piece of it's shit. It's a goddamn tin can.
It's a tin can.
We share it with another goddamn team. We couldn't get like a spectacular. We have 2 massively profitable franchise teams in the NFL. And you couldn't get a better stadium. The Rams and the freaking Chargers have the state-of-the-art stadium in LA. You've got the Giants and Jets, just in the biggest media market that we have. And that's the best that you could come up with.
Well, the artist rendition pictures before it came out with the lighting made it look a little bit cooler. But when you see it in person, you're like, oh. And then you go on in, it's like, it's all gray. It's like, this place isn't very... Add some color to this. It's not good. Anyway,
it's like that.
No, we went off on a tangent.
Well, it's like those old fruit punch cans. Like if you rip the rip the blue label off, and then you go, oh, that's what it looks like underneath. Yeah. Like that's not
aesthetically pleasing.
The thing that you have to be careful of, right? Cleveland has options, though. One thing that Myles Garrett didn't say is he didn't say, I know who's the quarterback's going to be, and I know exactly when they're going to draft them.
He made it sound like he knew.
He made it known that he knew what they were going to do.
Yeah.
But Cleveland's sitting at 2. There are other teams that could easily want to jump up ahead and get, especially if they're after a Carter or a Hunter, and that gives Cleveland true. Yeah. But that gives Cleveland ammunition for next year, where they will be able to clear off some money off their cap. They can get rid of Watson if they want to next year. They have room. But if you're a Myles Garrett, are you banking on next year? I mean,
no. When you were going down that path, I'm like, that's not what he was smiling about. So I don't know what he's smiling. So there are 3 guys. I mean, that's why I keep saying there are guys that keep coming out and saying on multiple teams saying, I know what our plan is, and it's pretty good. And I'm like, well, I could believe that if I could look around the landscape and say, I know what he's getting at. Yeah. But I look at free agents and I look at the draft and I think I know what's going to happen in the draft. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about then? Like you said, do you get that excited about Shador or do you get that excited about Kirk Cousins? He was like, yeah, I know. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, he was excited. He had 40 million reasons to be excied per year. Yeah, it's so basically right now we're, as we've said, we want to focus on other stuff. We're in a holding pattern. I have said that I would draw a line in the sand, and my line in the sand would actually be this week. Mainly,
you already said that too. You said this week.
Yeah, because
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because at some point, I mean, here we are. It's March 19th
Wednesday.
when we're recording this.
Yeah, let's make
Uh,
sure while we're doing this, they hasn't signed. You keep
yeah,
talking.
yeah. So it's March 19th. We're recording this, and the draft is literally just a month and a month and 5 days away. It's the
Yeah.
24th. So your attention has got to be turned to what are we going to do at 3? And I don't want the Giants to be trying to figure out what you're going to do at 3 by signing Aaron Rodgers like April 18th. Yeah, sure, they can pivot and whatever, but that means everything, every little block that you were putting in place leading right up to that now goes out the window.
Well, how
That
long can they wait? How long can they wait, though? They could wait till the
in
18th if they wanted
in
to, right?
reality, they could wait till after the draft if
Oh,
they
God, I don't think they can wait till after the draft. Do you
well
think they can
you
wait?
I'm not saying I would. I'm saying they could if they are so desperate for Aaron and they just go, no matter what, at 3, we're taking a quarterback. It's either going to be Sanders or Dart. We assume Dart. By the way, we don't freaking know who the Giants actually like. But let's assume it's Sanders or Dart if Ward is gone. If you're guaranteed, I'm going to take a quarterback at 3 no matter what, then you could technically still wait for Rodgers afterwards. But you've really messed up your whole offseason at that point. I know you don't really do anything later, but you do kind of install stuff in the coaching staff. You install what you want to do, how you plan on doing it with your veterans, and then you kind of fit the rookies in. But if you get to the draft, then you've got Tommy DeVito. You're not counting on him. You're going to count on the rookie until Rodgers signs. I don't wait that long. I feel like you're doing a disservice to the rest of the players on the Giants team
Oh,
by doing
God,
that.
yeah. I mean, and exactly. That's what I'm talking about. It's kind of like, again, the Steeler was saying, do you want to be a part of this or not? So there's got to be a buy-in by the player, too, especially at the quarterback position. Do you want to be a part of this team? Do you want to be here in the spring? Do you want to be here in the summer? Do you want to be with the guys and develop chemistry with these guys? Look, we didn't like Daniel Jones as a player, but he would have these off-season passing things. They go out to the high school and throw. You got to develop some chemistry with your players. If he's out doing Aaron Rodgers things and doesn't want to have anything to do with this team, I'm not sure you want that on your team. But the Giants may be desperate enough to do that. The other thing too is if you wait till after the draft, so you're almost forced to draft a quarterback in round 1. And if they do that, at that point, if you got a Shador or a Dart on your team, do you want to promise Rodgers at that point that guy will never play as a rookie? Never. Not even in December, not even, late
Right.
November. And
Right.
I don't make that promise at that point because part of it is, look, dumbass, if you should have signed the deal before the draft and maybe we would have been okay with that, but you dragged your feet on this and we're going to sign Joe Flacco because we know he's going to help the guy help Jackson Dart or Shador, and we know we can sit him when it's time for those guys to play. So there is a little bit of risk here for Rodgers, but I don't think he thinks of it as a risk because he thinks he's God and he can go anywhere he wants. And he may be right that at some point some other quarterback will get hurt and he'll go into that situation. But I'm not. I mean, there are people out there that have said, "Oh, he could wait. He could wait until the summer on this." Blank that. I'm not waiting into June for Aaron to decide on this. And the Giants can't. If the Giants wait until like June or July on Aaron, then they deserve what they're going to get. I mean, if ownership and management go down that path, they deserve everything they're going to get this year. Sorry.
No. I'm kind of thinking the best way I wanted to say this. Position of strength in negotiation in many instances is perception. It's not always real. It's
Right.
what is perceived to be a position of strength. The Giants right now have done everything that they've done in terms of trying to get Matthew Stafford, the chase of Matthew Stafford, the way that they were doing it. And they weren't the only team. The way they're doing Aaron Rodgers, and they're not the only team. But from their perspective, they've done everything with this the perception of we are desperately trying to acquire a veteran to come in to win because we have to win X number of games, whatever those numbers, whatever the numbers are. I have my idea, but we don't know what Giants Central thinks. But the Giants need to start acting like you're not in that position. Like literally, it doesn't matter that you are. You have to stop acting like you are.
So are you going to bring up organizational arrogance?
No, I mean, there is that, but I mean, right now what they're doing, it's more like an air of desperation is what you're doing. You're bending over backwards. It's clear that it's been reported the Giants have offered more money. So if you're down to two teams, and that's what it appears to be at the moment, Steelers, Giants, and the one team has offered you more money, you've already let those two teams know, I don't really want the one with the more money at the moment because that's not the difference yet. Doesn't mean that it won't be the difference ultimately, but at the moment, it's not. And the Giants need to just stop doing that. First off, you go in, you go, here's the deal. This is what we plan to give you. I'll give you some of the things you're asking for, but there's going to be an expectation, and that is I need a deal by this date. And if you don't get it, pardon the word, we don't do it often. Fuck it. You move away, because I have said over and over and over again, so I won't back off what I said. I think Aaron Rodgers is the way to get as many wins as they can possibly get, and they have to do that.
Right.
Anybody else who argues that that's bullshit, you can say it all you want. You're not the guy trying to keep your job. They are. You can argue that it was stupid to bring them back and have them in that position, and I will agree with you. But they are in that position. And they have to do what they have to do to win. Their job isn't to go ahead and I need to worry about what the Giants are going to look like 3 years from now when I'm not the coach. Daboll's got to win. So you're looking at Rodgers. But at some point, the difference between the number of wins that Rodgers could give you versus the impression you give to everybody else on the team, the impression you give across the league, the impression that you give as a coach with power is so waning every day that goes by, because now you look like a beggar. I just walk away. I go, there's a date, and I go to Wilson, or preferably for me, it's Flacco Winston over Wilson, because I just don't care at that point.
Well,
then I draft.
Well, there's a precedent here too, because remember, what is the impression? Who was running the Jets? Who do people think was running the Jets at one point?
Well, they think Rodgers was calling.
It felt like Rodgers was running the Jets. Is it starting to feel like Rodgers may be starting to dictate terms to the Giants now? Like, again, so I don't want to read too much into this, but again, it kind of gets into what you're talking about. Let's not let the inmates run the asylum here. Again, he's the employee, potential employee, and you don't want to give him too much power over you either, because again, Daboll's already on the hot seat. So the last thing you want the locker room to start thinking is, who the hell's really running this team? Is it Aaron Rodgers or is it Brian Daboll? So
and the other question,
have some dignity, have some self-respect at some point.
Well, and the other question of that, right? Like, here's the other thing, and we've done Rodgers so much.
Yeah, we've done Rodgers.
We've done Rodgers.
Yeah.
Not in those special clubs in Wisconsin that one guy posted that one time. I don't know anything about that. Before, when Rodgers was supposedly running the Jets, what was happening with the Jets? They brought in the coach that Rodgers wanted to come in. They brought in Lazard.
Yeah.
Then they went and got Adams during the season. I'm trying to remember, was it Driver?
They did everything they wanted. They did everything Rodgers, or the perception was they did everything Rodgers wanted.
Well, my thought is, though, what hasn't happened this offseason? If you knew for a fact, right? Because they seemed like a happy band of bring the Little Rascal gang together and they'll move together, right? Devontae Adams took a deal and went to another team. Didn't even bother to wait.
Right.
If I'm thinking that, and Lazard hasn't been, he was on the trading block. The Jets didn't get rid of him yet. They haven't cut him yet. But I haven't heard him going, just release me, or there hasn't been any talk about that. Then maybe they know something that the rest of the league probably should pay attention to, and that is, they don't know that Aaron's coming back, period. So we're taking our deals elsewhere. Because Adams could have waited. There was no reason for him to hurry. He was going to get a shit ton of money this year no matter what. He had guaranteed money already. The Jets just cleared him off their salary cap because they had money that carried over. But he's already been paid his money. So he didn't have to sign with anybody instantly. He could have waited.
And what if
But
Rodgers gets to June and he says, I'm retiring? you
well, see,
know?
and that's the question right now, right? He's playing that game.
Yeah.
He's letting you wonder if he's going to come back or not. But think about this, right? You go through the draft. What if San Francisco goes through the draft and they still don't have a deal done with Purdy yet? But they add a couple of weapons because they've gotten rid of a few guys. But they add a couple of weapons. They want to. They look like they're going to make a run. Aaron's from that area. What's to say that he doesn't go back to San Francisco? And don't think that Shanahan's not under pressure to win. They've been cutting guys and moving them around and getting rid of salary. But that's a team that needs to win. Shanahan struggled. What if a Miami comes out of nowhere? Maybe Tua doesn't look so good on the offseason,
Yeah.
or they're worried about his concussions. So if I'm Rodgers, if I don't want the Steelers and I don't want the Giants, and I think this is your real big point, then I just let you guys know I don't really want you guys
He
at the
doesn't
moment,
want
and
us.
I'm gonna wait, So don't you guys move on without me. I think that's. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's really what
No,
bothers you the most.
no, you
Is
said it. Yeah,
just do
and
that.
I'm going to channel Rich Eisen, who was channeling Kramer from Seinfeld, the episode about the contest where Kramer came in and he said, "I'm out." Yeah, I'm out. So I'm out. Rogers, we offered you a contract. I'm out. I'm ready to move on at this point. And I agreed with you. You sold me. I don't mean this as a criticism, but you sold me on the idea of having Rodgers in here as the bridge. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I could get on board with that. He's still, like you said, he's throwing 28 touchdown passes. He's still coming off the injury. You could still
Right.
look what else is out there. But after this is so, like I said on the website earlier, I said, it's been 2 weeks of this. And somebody said, Eric, it's been a week, but it feels like it's been a month to me. I'm already exhausted with this stuff. And I get it. I'm one of the first people to say what we're talking about in March and April and May will long be forgotten in September and October and November. I'm one of those guys that says,
Sure.
don't make too much of what's going on now because you won't even remember that we were having these discussions. So there's a part of me that says, am I being too impatient here? But some of this gets down to football is a game, and grown men root for these athletes who are in their 20s like we're kids still. And I want a guy who wants to be here. And I want a guy that I can root for. And right now I look at Aaron Rodgers and I'm like, I can't root for this guy. He's a douchebag. And that's where I feel like right now. And again, it's not the off the field stuff. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just, and people are going to go, why is he a douchebag? Because he's negotiating. And I'm like, just pick a team. The contracts are on the table. You either want to play for the Steelers or you want to play for the Giants. And if you don't, tell them you don't want to play for them. If you're waiting for a better offer, then just tell them that. But again, I'm more like Mike Florial here. It's just like enough. And I'm like the Steelers player. I'm like, do you want to be here or don't you want to be here? And I don't want to root. I already feel like I can't root for this guy even if he does sign here because he's pissing me off. He's pissing me off. He throws for 5 touchdowns in a game. I'll be like, yay. But right now I'm like, I don't want him on the team. So.
It's like he's kind of comes off as the character Parkman from Major League 2. I think he's played by David Keith. And
I have not seen Major League 2.
Yeah. You're not missing a whole lot. But this whole idea, like he's this big time free agent, he comes aboard and they're all excited. They're like, "Oh, we got Parkman. And then halfway through the season, they get rid of him because he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care about the team. It was all about him. Rodgers right now, we don't know anything. By the way, we know nothing. He has not publicly said one thing. It's everybody who says they've heard things or his people have said, but he's never specifically said it's not the Giants. He never specifically said it's not the Steelers. All we heard was he told some people that he wanted to play for the Vikings. Well, guess what? The Vikings just told you they don't really want you. So here's a guy who is dissing teams that want him, that are courting him, and he's getting rejected by teams that he supposedly wants. When does he turn around? At what point does that ego come in that I want to come in and I want everybody to shower me? And that's the one thing I think he might decide sooner on because he wants to overshadow. And that's why I thought
Yes.
He would do it before the start of the college basketball tournament, and that's tomorrow. So it either has to happen tonight or early tomorrow morning to do that. Or at that point, I think it'll linger for a couple of weeks. He'll wait until the tournament's done. He's not going to be overshadowed by something else.
And again, we're talking about a 41-year-old quarterback at the very end of his career. So for for a team like us that really at this point is trying to not get its coach fired. So I'm just not.
So
it doesn't move the needle for me right now, and I'm ready to move on. So we should probably talk.
Yeah, let's shift gears.
Let's shift gears because I don't want to make this episode too long. So, free agents.
Yeah, so we picked up a few extra guys over the last couple of days. I'll let you kind of touch on those guys, and then let's talk from there. We'll just talk real quick. What's left really for the Giants to kind of be doing right now versus the eye being turned to the draft?
Yeah, and I think so when we last did we did a show. Our last show didn't really get into the free agent moves that they had made since the show before that, when we covered all the activity when they were really focused in on the secondary, and they brought in Javon Holland and Adebo and Golston and those guys, and we even had Hudson and Board and Robertson Harris. We went through all these guys that they signed and Forsythe. And so, but after that, they have brought back two guys that you thought they'd bring back one of these guys. I wasn't sure they would bring back either of these guys, but they brought back Van Roten and Stinney at guard on the offensive line. And Van Roten does what you had already said, is he gives you flexibility at center in case there's a problem with John Michael Schmitz. So he's older. He's nearing the end. It's weird. If you go on X, people have a really inflated view of Van Roten. I don't know why. I don't know where that's coming from. He was okay. Greg Van Roten, he was okay, but he wasn't, but he gives some stability. He's well liked. He was one of the leaders of the team. He got him back, and they brought Stinney back. So if you combine that with the two swing tackles that they signed, I think that's not a great sign for our draft picks, Josh Ezeudu and Evan Neal. I'm not saying that they're definitely gone, but boy, they have to have a stellar spring and summer, or they're not long for this team at this point. So I thought, number one, there's other people to talk about, but I thought it was very interesting since we last talked about the additions that they brought both back. They brought both of those guys back.
Would you say that might be a better indication that the Giants are still fairly locked in on they're going to have a veteran quarterback starting? Because if you didn't, then it wouldn't necessarily matter to you that you brought back a Van Roten. You could go get you might spend a lot more money on a more experienced guard, a younger guy with more physical talent versus a guy who knows the system already can mesh, because you're going to bring a veteran quarterback in. Or maybe you even go younger and you draft and you play the rookie and let him develop, kind of like the Giants did with Chris Snee. They had, they brought Snee came in with Eli. So I just get the weird feeling that this is really designed. They went more veteran across the board so that they had experience, because we're going to probably be playing that veteran quarterback.
No, I don't think so. That's not going to help you. I just think I think if you believe that they tried to get Fries from the Colts, that they definitely tried to at least upgrade. I don't think there were a lot of guards out there.
Tevin Jenkins is still out there, though, I believe.
Yeah, there was this narrative out there that there were a lot of guards out there. They were either really old guys that were nearing the end, and there were a couple of guys that were interested. And one of them is one that you just mentioned. But I don't think there was I think they were just trying to stabilize the offensive line for anyone, being a rookie, be it a veteran. They just want to have, because what's been the problem? It's been depth on the offensive line,
right?
Mainly depth at tackle. And Stinney was a backup last year who could come in and play. And one of the reason why Evan Neal wasn't moved to guard, there were many reasons why Evan Neal didn't move to guard, but one of the reasons was because Stinney was on the roster too, and he had more experience playing guard than Neal, who was out the entire spring and the summer with an injury, so he wasn't able to practice there. So I just think bringing them back is insurance policy. They might not even make the team, but their contracts haven't been released yet. But I don't expect them to be big contracts. Maybe like 1 year, $2 million type deals. We'll see what they are. But I just think it gives them flexibility, and at center and at guard, and gives them depth. And if somebody like Kubis plays way better than Stinney, you can get rid of Stinney. If Evan Neal really rocks the world at guard, again, you can get rid of Stinney. Same thing with Van Roten. If John Michael Schmitz is doing really well and Schlottman's okay at center, so I'm not even sure it's given they'll be back. I think it's interesting. They've again, what we've talked about a lot, the Giants are very reactive. So based on what happened last year, again, with the injuries on the offensive line, they've reacted now to getting 2 swing tackles and multiple solutions at guard in case injuries hit all over the place again. So I think they're overreacting is not the right word, but they're overreacting to what happened last year.
Right.
If that makes sense. And then so we should also get to who they've quote unquote lost here, but they brought in another inside linebacker who plays special teams, who has starting experience, in Demetrius Flanagan Fowles. I don't know what's with the hyphenated names this year, but we've got Roy Robertson Harris and Flanagan Fowles. But he's from the 49ers, has started when people have gotten hurt, has played special teams. I don't think he's a lock to make the team. Especially since they brought in Chris Board, who's the better player, the better special teams player. And then they, two under the radar guys, one from the Jaguars and one from the Cardinals. Jeremiah Ledbetter is a guy in the defensive line who he's one of the few guys that we've picked that's 30. I think he's 30, who's older. And he's a guy that has actually played his best season at that age. So he had his best year last year, and he's a guy that, again, I don't think he's going to start, but he could be a key part of a rotation. So when you have Ledbetter and you have Robertson Harris now, it is curious that you and I have talked, they haven't cut Nunez Roches, and they've got a number of younger guys, but these guys that they've added, these veteran guys, may be better than the younger guys. And there's a lot of competition now. And I don't think it precludes them from drafting somebody still, but they've got much more depth and competition at the defensive tackle. And then the last guy, and I want to talk about the guys we lost too, but the last guy was the outside linebacker, Victor Dimu. Did we say it was Dimukaje?
Yeah,
I think that's how he says it. So I think, is largely that's a knee flex response, knee jerk response to losing Ojulari too, is you had to bring in another backup linebacker. And he's got some, he's an interesting guy. He's a former draft pick. A lot of the guys that we've signed were 2021. Now our 2021 class was horrific. They're all gone. None of our 2021 picks are on the team, but a ton of the people that we've signed are 2021 draft picks from other teams. So we've kind of swapped out 2021 picks. And he's another one of those 2021 picks that we picked up. Again, a guy that's on his second contract, a draft pick on his second contract, and we may get something better out of them than their former team did. So
it's an interesting group of guys that we went. We spent a large sum of money in the secondary, which we kind of knew that they were, at the very least, they were going to get one corner, possibly two. I wasn't as thinking they were going to go spend a lot of money as safety. That's especially considering if they did, maybe it would have been retaining Pinnock, but they clearly had no interest in doing that. And we spent a ton. One thing we did do is we are very young overall in the secondary. Our guys should be ascending players in the secondary. The depth at linebacker, I think, is decent in terms of the special teams. We replace some of the guys that were special teams guys. They seem like they could have some regular situational football ability. The D-line stuff is okay. I'm not sure I'm not sure that takes them out of drafting a defensive lineman and possibly quite high still. I think if you can get a difference maker on the D line, they're still probably going to be looking in that direction.
Right. Right.
Um,
And what what's interesting is there's only a year difference between Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin, which is crazy. And
oh yeah, yeah.
he's been in the league for 4 years, so that's actually crazy. So yeah, so let's let's wrap this up. I think you had a good summary. I mean, they've spent way more in terms of quantity and quality on defense, and I think that's a reflection of what you and I talked about in our preview. There were way more interesting defensive players in free agency than offensive players. We covered it. There weren't any tight ends, very, very few, hardly any wide receivers that we liked. There wasn't many offensive linemen in this, and then we already discussed the quarterbacks like crazy. But there were interesting guys on all three levels of the defense. You and I were surprised about the safety money being spent, but that really changes the defense. So it's this team is actually not looking terrible. They just need a quarterback. So that's kind of where are right now.
And we continue to look. So I am a little curious. I know we're going to keep it tight. Your thoughts on wide receiver. We knew that the free agent field was pretty sparse. There was really top notch couple of guys, and they were taken off very early. The franchise tag put on T. Higgins, who ultimately got a huge deal with the Bengals. The Giants re-signed Slayton, which we both were a little surprised at. Certainly, the cost alone, the fact of the way things had gone, it seemed like Slayton was on his way out. Now he's back. But the Giants just recently showed interest in Zach. Is it Paschal or Pascal?
Yes.
And so another guy who he's that sort of 4'5", 5'6" wide receiver.
Special teams player. We're loading up on special teams players, even though they've legislated the kick returns out of the game.
And I'm not really sure why. I mean, and all they did was kick the tires, right? We didn't sign him, but I'm not really sure what the reasoning would be to bring a guy like that in before the draft.
Yeah,
because these guys, there's still veterans out there you could add and let the draft kind of play out. It's not really necessary. The only thing that it's kind of screams to me is I think this coaching staff is soured on Jalen Hyatt a lot.
Yeah, it could be, or they just want to add they want to add size to the receiver room. He's a taller receiver, and they just want to. But you made a good point. Like, why not wait? But they didn't sign him yet either.
Right? They didn't sign him.
Maybe they're bringing him in, and they're saying if we don't draft somebody, we'll sign you after the draft. That could be it too. But if you look at this room, other than Ford Wheaton, there's still not a lot of big receivers in this room. So, and again, if you look at it, he's had some decent. When I say decent, he's as a guy that you bring in as maybe a fourth wide receiver. You could, in his prime, you could do worse, but he's made most of his noise lately on special teams. So you brought this up before we went on the air. We seem to be signing a lot of special teams guys,
right?
Which is nothing wrong with that, but like I said, they've kind of legislated the kick returns out of the game a little bit here, and it would have been great if it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago and we were still competing for Super Bowls. Then you're really wanting to get your special teams in order right now. So
it's that line from the first Major League movie. He's like, I wish we had him 2 years ago. We did 5 years ago then. So just real quick,
gotta wrap up.
Yeah, real quick. I want to ask your opinion. I'm going to make a massive assumption, and I want to see if you agree. If you're Darius Slayton, do you sign here, knowing at the time that only Tommy DeVito's there and everything is really up in the air? Or do you really believe that maybe he does know something a little more of what they plan to do, and that's why he's
and he's kind of been always a fairly honest guy, and he said it in his press conference last week. He said, I didn't think I was going to be back either. And then you had I think it was Dontino or Schmelk. One of them said he was saying his goodbyes in the locker room when they were cleaning out their lockers, and everyone got the vibe he's not coming back. And he said the same thing. I didn't think I was going to be back. And it's kind of the same thing with Ojulari. They, you and I talked about this. It didn't make sense for Ojulari to come back here to be stuck behind Kayvon and Brian Burns. It would have been better. I mean, Philadelphia is a perfect situation for him. It's perfect because then he gets to come in as a situational pass rusher on a team loaded with pass rushers. He's going to put up big numbers again if he stays healthy.
In theory,
yeah, if he stays healthy. I mean, but I thought Slayton would want to go with, his truth, but I thought he'd want to go to a team with a quarterback. But then he comes on and he says, the Giants have a plan at quarterback, they've told me. And I'm left with the same thing. Well, what's the plan? Is it Shedeur? I mean, is that the plan?
I'm kind of thinking it is with some like a veteran, but we're definitely because it almost has to be both. Because you can't guarantee that you're going to sign a specific guy because they have to agree. And you're not doing it yet. Drafting is the only thing technically you can control the player you want as long as they're there, and you can find ways to get there. I don't know. I think
unless it's the organizational arrogance that you've talked about before, where they thought for sure they had Matthew Stafford, and they told their players, and they think that they had Aaron Rodgers. And remember, there wasn't. I mean, it's going to sound like I'm covering up for the asshat, but remember, there was an asshat who very early on, again, before people were talking about it, said the Giants are attempting to sign Aaron Rodgers. Again, that was a BBI thing. But he said it's a done deal. And so he may have been hearing that from people in the organization. Oh, we got Aaron Rodgers. I mean, again, that organizational arrogance that, people want to come here. We're the New York Giants. Why wouldn't you want to come here? And we're offering more money than anybody else. So obviously he's going to pick us over anybody else. So that's, again, I'm not saying that's what's happening.
Oh, sure.
I think that's a possibility.
And I agree with the arrogance part, but that means that Slayton bought into it.
Right. Well,
and that's weird.
Come up to you and say, we've got this. But
then that also considers, and I know money talks, but we did get Paulson Adebo, we did get Javon Holland, and you spent big money on those guys. I'm sure they had options to go to other teams. So
they're telling somebody. They're telling somebody something.
Somebody's been told something like, don't worry, we're not going to roll into the season with Tommy DeVito.
Right. But what if we're having a podcast in a month? When's the draft again? On the 24th?
April 24th.
We're now on the 19th. All right, so say we're 6 weeks from now and we're going, they've brought back Drew Lock and Tim Boyle, and we go in with the same quarterback room. That's not going to happen, but what if it was? Can you imagine? It's the same quarterback.
Championship. Now, so
yes. All right. On that note.
On that, yeah. So we're
by the way, before we get off, I just saw on that Florio is posted on BBI. I haven't read the thread yet, but Florio's claiming the Vikings are not out of it yet. So he's a Vikings guy. So it sounds like Aaron's going to live his truth. So
I think if I'm the Vikings, I go ahead and dangle that. First off, why would I even say no? Why would I say anything? I'm just going to be like, we might be. And for them, yeah, we'll let you come for a mill.
Said earlier,
we're not giving you 40.
They tweeted out one of these people that said the Vikings are not in it anymore. They're not interested. Also said that McCarthy's knee is not healing as quickly as hoped, but it's not a problem. But that raises a little bit of a red flag to me. It's like, what do you mean? Why would you throw that in? Why would you throw that in there? So the guy who had 2 surgeries last year, and the first surgery didn't take, had a second surgery, and now they just kind of say, well, he's going to be ready, but it's just not going as well as we'd hoped. Because you always hear, well, this, surgery went well and he's ahead of schedule, but you didn't hear that. Yeah. So I don't know. Move on. Giants move on. It's time to move on.
I agree. I think draw a line in the sand. In fact, personally, I think the Giants need to come right out and let people know what that line in the sand is.
Friday, maybe say Friday.
You just say, here's the date. We've told Aaron we want him. We've given him, and here's the date. We are going to move forward with other stuff, and that's fine. And that's fine if Aaron wants to come back and check with us. Maybe we have a spot, maybe we don't. That's what you do. That's what you move on, because quite frankly, it doesn't really in all honesty, I have to be as honest as I can possibly be with myself. It may not matter regardless.
Yeah.
With him, without him, this team
Yes.
still might be. You've got a coaching staff kind of like, so you don't know. But at some point, you have to show
Pride.
yeah, that's it exactly. We make decisions based on what we want, not on your terms. We've offered you money that should be the deciding factor for you. If it's not, then that means you don't like the rest of the package, and I can't change the rest of the package for you. I'm not going to get rid of the coach for you. We're not going to get rid of this. We're not bringing in a whole new set of players just for you. So it's either you like the package and the money, or you don't like the package and the money's not going to change that, and we'll move on and you go do your thing.
Yeah, but think of it almost like a relationship with a woman. So do you want to be with someone who doesn't really like you?
Right.
So no.
Call me back.
Get out of that relationship right now.
Call me back if I have nothing to do on Friday.
Yeah.
Like really nothing. then we'll go out. Yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, we better end it. Okay.
So like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We will do another show this week at some point, more towards probably Friday, Saturday, whatever. We haven't even said it, but it'll be. And if something breaks, we'll find time to do that. So that being said, I appreciate everybody watching, and keep liking. We're so close. We're at 950 subscribers, and we're now on Apple Podcasts as well. So
yeah,
check us out there.
we're on Apple too.
So we appreciate it. We will catch up real soon.